All right. Welcome to the Gut Check Project. I'm Eric Rieger, and I am joined by your host on the Gut Check Project, the board-certified gastroenterologist, Dr. Ken Brown. Welcome to your own show.
Wow. So we are now on the Gut Check Project. This is the inaugural show. You know, I'm just thinking that we've been planning on doing something like this for a long time. We had this incredible opportunity to do it with these great mentors, Chef Patrick, and all these other great guys here doing this incredible production value. Now we have a studio. You know, I'm thinking that maybe our tagline should be something like the Gut Check Project. Let's all check our egos at the door and learn from each other. Nothing is off the table.
Nothing's off the table. In fact, we have a bunch of stuff on our table. So this is our first episode. People may say, Gut Check Project sounds great. Who in the hell is that guy? He says he's a doctor, but he's not wearing scrubs. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, Dr. Brown?
So my name is Kenneth Brown. I'm a board-certified gastroenterologist. I do want to back up just a second and explain exactly why we're here. Because a few weeks ago, I had the opportunity and the pleasure to come and actually be a guest on Doc Thompson's show here on Mojo 5.0.
Sure.
And then we came over to Spoonie Radio, and we had a great show. You can go to the YouTube channel and take a look at that. And unfortunately, a few days later, he was actually tragically killed. So I just want to pay respects to that and say thank you. We wouldn't be here without him. I had such a great time with him, and he's the one that explained, man, you can do this. You guys should have your own show. It's going to be fun. So unfortunately, you know, we lost this great guy, and he's the real reason why we're sitting in this particular studio, because I got so excited hanging out with him. So
No doubt.
yeah. So as I said, my name's Ken Brown, board certified gastroenterologist. I'll just give you the whole story. There's probably a lot of people that don't know anything about me. So
They probably don't.
I was actually born in Lubbock, Texas.
That's right. Big Red Raider.
Big Red Raider, briefly. Parents moved almost immediately to Nebraska, so I consider myself more of a Nebraskan. And I went to medical school in Nebraska. My fourth year of med school, I'm scraping ice off my car, and I just went, no, I'm done with this. I'm going to move someplace cool and warm, and I just ran to Texas. And so I ended up doing the rest of my training in San Antonio and became board medicine certified in internal medicine and then gastroenterology. And since then moved to the Dallas area, Plano, Texas. Have been practicing gastroenterology for, wow, too long now.
Yeah, sure. Good while.
A good while.
A lot of rear ends.
Yeah, a lot. Yeah, we do. I'm a butt doctor. That's why I say nothing's off the table. I'll talk about anything when we're over here. And so I have two kids. I have a Puerto Rican wife, so we speak a lot of Spanish in the house. I work very hard so that my family can play a lot of tennis. And
Sure.
We're on Spoonie Radio. We got Chef Patrick being a mentor here. And as it turns out, my family is total foodies. We love sort of bonding around food. So it's a perfect environment. We're in this diner setting. It's a great way to launch the show. So I want to ask you, Eric Superfly Rieger, I think that's your nickname?
No, without question. My parents always called me Superfly.
Yeah. So Eric, I know that you were a child actor. A brief period you were a rodeo clown.
Right.
And then you were a male model.
Yep.
And so what are you doing now besides helping me host this show?
Well, I was in the middle of inventing a mechanism to create high temperature ice cubes, and didn't really work out. So
Were they melting?
Every time.
Dang it.
There was nothing I could do. But I will say that led to me deciding to become a CRNA, or a certified registered nurse anesthetist. And then back in 2012, I ended up meeting you, and we've been, I was your anesthesia provider as you were working in gastroenterology. And of course, I work a few places outside of the GI clinic to deliver anesthesia as well. But I also have a wife and two sons that are not into tennis, but very much into competitive basketball, and both in high school now. And so that basically led to me working alongside you. And next thing I know, just like every aspiring gastroenterologist and anesthesia provider, I ended up on a podcast.
There we go. So so it looks like you're CRNA. You've got kids that are heavily involved in basketball.
Sure.
I do believe you work for another company called Atrantil, which is dear to my heart, which we'll talk in a little bit.
Yeah.
And you even have worked for a tequila company and still have a part owner of that, right?
Yeah, I am a small owner of that. One of my best friends I grew up with in Gainesville, Texas. His name is Scott Willis. And several years ago, he just approached me and said, I'm going to start a tequila company by myself unless you want to help. And I knew nothing about it. And I said, that sounds great. Let's do it. So we asked people for money. Would they like to invest in tequila? And people like investing in alcohol. And he, back in 2012, right when I met you, he launched Tequila 512, and it's based out of Austin. And they slowly are growing out. It's an all organic tequila, and he's doing quite well. He's very excited.
So we both are involved in several companies. So this is what happens when ADD just meets momentum and just things just keep going. And we decide, yeah, let's just have our own podcast now. Do it in a full studio that has, great mentors, like I'd mentioned. Like we're going to have the ability to have this high production value. We've got the cameras. This is stuff that we could never do. You and I have talked about doing a podcast before, but I'm so excited that we're on Spoonie Radio right now to actually launch this. We've been involved with a lot of great people over the last few years. I've done a lot of podcasts.
Without question.
Yeah, and we've made some great contacts. And basically, all those guys, every one of the podcasts we've gone on, guys like Chris Kresser and Rob Wolf, and I could just name, we've done Ben Greenfield, ton of podcasts. They've all been so cool to us and kept in touch and said, when you guys have your own show, we can do this. I would love for Spoonie Radio to get big enough that we can start flying these people in and having great shows and talking about different things. That's my ultimate goal with this. So, support of this show is going to be really important.
I would say with the mentorship of Doc Thompson, and of course, in his wake, you still have Patrick, you still have Ron, you still have Tom, and all the company really picking up and pressing with Spoonie Radio, that it won't be long until that happens. And it doesn't just stop at those podcasts that you mentioned. I mean, you were even on the Wellness Mama. You even were on Kara Fitzgerald. The exposure that you had there from going on all of those different types of podcasts, I think it was really eye-opening. So maybe tell us a little bit about why are you doing this podcast after doing all of those podcasts?
Every time that we had the opportunity to go on with such great people that were really established, if they had like Melanie Avalon,
okay,
that, intermittent fasting. I went on her intermittent fasting podcast. And because of the research I did for that, now I practice intermittent fasting. So I start looking at what everybody's message is. We look at Ben Greenfield. He's a biohacker. Love the stuff he's doing. I look into everything that he has going on. That's how come now I have a infrared sauna. I got a vibration plate. I'm doing all these biohacking things because of going on Ben's show and talking to him about all that stuff.
Sure.
And I read Rob Wolf's first book. I haven't read his second book yet, but his first book, The Paleo Solution, great book. I realized, oh my goodness, I'm gonna change my diet here so that I can be more paleo. Every time we go on a show, Chris Kresser, the Kresser Institute, holy cow, fantastic functional medicine doctor. I'm a traditionally trained MD, and honestly, he opened up my world to the aspect of treating a patient holistically and working on their lifestyle to make everything better. He was the first person that I got in close contact with that was actually talking like that. So every time we do one of these podcasts, I grow from it. I become a more robust, I become a more holistic. I've just grown from being a traditional trained MD to more of a functional gastroenterologist. And I really want to thank every podcast I've been on. I mean, I'm thinking of some really fun ones. Sexy Brain, the author of Sexy Brain.
Right.
That was a super fun one.
Sure.
Where it's just her whole philosophy is that you have to, as we age, continue sexuality and promoting that and protecting the brain. And you start seeing the certain themes. What we're seeing is protect the brain. In my motto, it's all health begins and ends in the gut.
Correct.
And if your gut is unhealthy, everything else is going to start breaking down on you. So if we can protect your gut, then we know we can protect your brain. And if I can get you to sleep, then we know that all the pillars of health are covered. And we're going to hopefully bring all these people in to give their expertise in each one of these spots. That's going to be the real goal of this show, is to bring the education that I'm out there talking to people with. After I would do a show, I was shocked at how many people would contact me from all over the country, if not all over the world. And they would say, I heard you on this podcast. You mentioned this one thing. Can you expand on that a little bit more? I'm like, wow, they're emailing me. They're doing this. I was just on their podcast. That was it. People were trying to make appointments with me because they were so frustrated that their doctors were not listening to them. And here I am learning from authors. We have biohackers. We've got athletes. We have professional athletes that we've been talking to. I feel like the whole point of Gut Check Project is check your ego at the door. Let's learn from each other. And if we can learn from each other and I can get that message out to more people, I truly believe that we can change the landscape of health.
So I'm going to say something here. I've known you for several years. So I know and I've seen your patients come through. And I've seen where a lot of this genesis of the new ideas, the new applications of what you want to do with your patients and how they've begun to receive it, because we see them in the GI lab and we see them from the very beginning, and then suddenly they begin to feel better. And then they talk about not only how has it affected them, but how they want to share that message with their own family. And then, lo and behold, I believe the first actual podcast that you went on, you didn't have any warm-ups. You went straight to Chris Kresser because we literally did not know what we were getting into. And at that point, you went on, and it was less than 24 hours it was published, that suddenly phones, email, website, traffic, on and on and on. People began to reach out to you long outside or far outside your nucleus of where you have your practice in North Texas. It was multiple states. Tell me a little bit about that. What did that do for you to recognize what that platform was doing for you and the message that you had for people to get better?
What that told me was that the people that were listening to that podcast had a trusted source. There was no agenda. It's just somebody that they trusted, and they listened to that, and they wanted to continue to believe in whatever he was saying.
Okay.
When it's a podcast, you have the ability to subscribe or not. You're not stuck in traffic and an ad just pops up and it does this. This is what this show is going to be about. I want to talk about stuff that I truly believe in also. I want to talk about things that I have seen success with. I have a lot of patients that have had tremendous success doing diet changes, supplements, changing a few things, workout routines, and they get tremendous benefit from that. And none of their other doctors are talking like that. Well, the platform is bigger than this. We have to get the word out. When I learn something, I want everybody to get better. So what Chris showed me was we just jumped right in that medium is so powerful. If you're honest, if you're talking science, if you're backing it up and you're bringing guests on that are doing the exact same thing. That's what I want to do with this. I want to bring typical scientists like that to talk research, to help out with that kind of thing. So if somebody has a question, let us know. Hey, can you talk to us about anti-aging? We'll reach out to, I have goals, I have aspirations. Peter Attia, I'm a huge fan of him. If you don't know who he is an anti-aging specialist. I've got some other interests also, jiu-jitsu and things like that. Eventually we'll have some, Joe Rogan on the show. That's my aspiration.
You can show off your pogo stick skills.
It may be a little much on the first show to say that, but I do think that we can we're going to bridge the gap between traditional medicine and functional science or natural solutions.
Okay, so you just hit on something else that I know that we're going to touch on eventually. And just so people know, the idea behind Gut Check Project is every Thursday from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. Central Time, we will stream live, and then, of course, it'll be available recorded after that. But every Thursday, that's going to be the Gut Check Project. And while we know that that's what we're going to do, we're going to have basic themes every single time that we do that. And what has enabled us to decide for Dr. Brown how to reach out to people on this medium is that he does want to bridge the gap. So that's something I know that we're going to talk about in the next half hour. But what is it to you to bridge that gap? What does that mean specifically? Because I know that it's between medical and natural science and the applications of the two.
When I started my practice, I came out of just the classic, Midwestern medical school, did my training in San Antonio, as I'd mentioned, learned a lot there about different disease applications and different disease states. And then once I started my practice, I started doing clinical research in pharmaceutical products that were being developed. And it was fascinating to me. I saw the whole process of how a compound starts, what they have to do to get it to market, how they have to get it FDA approved, the studies that are done, and I did those studies. There's limitations to that. It costs a ton of money.
Ton of money.
And you're not going to spend $30 million to get a drug approved if you're not kind of stacking the deck your way. So I realized that we need research. When I went to medical school, it was the dawn of the evidence-based medicine approach.
Sure.
So before that, it was always, you just had this mentorship where the guy in front of you taught you what they did and so on. That was the Socratic method of teaching. Now, all of a sudden, we're talking, oh, we need evidence-based medicine. Then everything became evidence. If the numbers didn't add up,
no go.
No go.
Yeah.
Well, guess what? If you got enough money, those numbers can add up.
Yeah. Something you can buy some go.
You can buy some go.
Yeah.
And that's what I was seeing. So because of the traditional research that I was doing, I actually was able to find some holes. And that's how we ended up developing a product called Atrantil, my baby, very close to me.
If you happen to be watching, you can see this is Atrantil. Nice little green packaging there.
We'll get into that a little bit more, but bottom line is, do me a favor, everybody, go to lovemytummy.com/Spoony, SPOONY. Show some love. We really want to support this station, not just for us, but also we're trying to make sure that Doc Thompson's vision keeps growing.
Growing.
And that's one way to do it, is to support the sponsors. Happens to be that I'm honored that my own company is a sponsor.
And still offers the 100% money back guarantee.
And they did it before we were given a show. That's what's so cool.
Yes. Yes, they did.
So props to our CEO, Chuck, for taking a bit of a chance there, and hopefully it will continue to grow.
What's up, Chuck? So we have talked a little bit about bridging the gap. You've obviously hit on the fact that you are the creator and researcher behind the development of Atrantil. It is a natural solution. You did do testing on it for IBS, but legally here in the United States, you have to say bloating. Ironically enough, though, when the product was invited with open arms by the NPN in Canada, what is it that we can say in Canada, eh?
As he cracks a Molson. So yeah, it's very fascinating. We just got our NPS number? NPN number in Canada. And in Canada, they're very different than the US. They actually, they don't want you to talk around issues. Like, what do your studies fix?
What does it show?
What does it show? What is the disease state? So in Canada, if we're in Canada, our new labeling says irritable bowel syndrome in Canada. And, I have to give some props out to, I do a lot of hemorrhoid work. And the hemorrhoid work, the company that I was using is CRH Medical. I actually called them this week because I'm like, how do we market in Canada? How do we team up to do this? As it happens, the products in Atrantil help with bloating and constipation, which ultimately bloating and constipation causes hemorrhoids. I'm like, let's team up. So that's another thing that we'll get into, but it's fun. Launching in a different country, different culture, trying to figure out what's going on. So yeah, so in Canada, we can say irritable bowel. Here, we got to say bloating in the vague terms.
Well, we're all looking around and shifting our heads because this is our first half hour ever of the Gut Check Project. But what I can tell you is if you've tuned in so far, hang with us for the next hour and a half. We're going to talk a little bit about what it was for Dr. Brown to do research, what it was about the creation of Atrantil, where he is on the ideas of the cannabis industry, naturally applied medications, on, and we're still going to get into some of the fun stuff. In fact, what's this little guy's name? If you can guess, go ahead and email us. The first 17,000 people to email this will get a green toothpick.
Yes. So the inaugural show, we realized that we needed a mascot. We're calling this guy Gutsy. He's a frog on the toilet with a phone.
Correct.
And I figured that if we had somebody here, Gutsy, that if somebody had a question and I couldn't answer, we'd have this little guy call up an expert. Because of all the work that we've been doing, I do know a lot of experts. Sure. I do know people that are experts in all kinds of things.
We're going to have an expert next week.
We're going to have an expert next week. That's correct. And probably we'll have experts every single week on topics. So if anybody has any topics that they want to cover.
KBMD Health.
Pat Sajak came out with stage 4 pancreatic cancer today.
Wrong.
I'm wrong with that.
That is Alex Trebek.
Alex Trebek.
They are
friends. I don't
friends.
watch a lot of TV. Sorry.
No. Yeah. No, you did not ask that in the form of a question either.
Yeah, I did not. So it's very sad, but that came out today. I started thinking, I was like, oh my gosh, I've had people texting me all morning long. Hey, what does stage 4 cancer, pancreatic cancer mean? And I'm like, man, one of my partners, I got 2 partners that are pancreatic experts.
Yeah.
That will tell you everything about that. That's what these guys do. We have a pancreatic surgeon that I work with all the time.
Did you see his statement that
No.
he made? Oh my gosh, he was so brave. He did it in his very professional tone, and even threw it to a joke saying he knows he's going to survive because he's got 3 years left on his contract. And I mean, and it's an incredibly difficult thing to go through knowing, but I believe he's 78 years old.
Is he really?
So he looks
amazing.
He looks incredible.
After all those insults by Sean Connery through the years, he still looks like
You can suck it, Trebek. Yeah, no, shout out to Saturday Night Live and the Jeopardies with Will Ferrell and the Sean Connery and Burt Reynolds impressions. I love that.
Some of the greatest things. When I saw that he actually had pancreatic cancer, first thing I thought of was SNL.
Yeah,
because I don't watch, I don't actually watch Jeopardy, but that's the first thing I thought of. But that's good for him for embracing it, and things like that bring awareness. So if there's anything like that going on, we're going to bring those experts. People have questions. Let's talk about different things that help prevent that, like healthy lifestyles. I'm really big into various diets, and I'll do them all. One of the things is going on these various podcasts, meeting people. I do a lot of lecturing, and so I'll go to like Paleo FX is a great one. I love that conference.
Great conference,
and got the opportunity to actually lecture this year there. We'll probably be lecturing next year also. Michelle Norris called me up and said, man, we really want you to come back. There's a great example of the ability of diet to just completely change people's lives. The Mediterranean diet being, a profound anti-cancer diet. And, we're going to hit in all that stuff.
Sure.
But it's not just going to be my opinion. It's going to be backed by science. We're going to sit there and talk about it. We're going to try and bridge that gap, like we mentioned. And if it's complex, because let me tell you what's complex. Something that's really complex is the endocannabinoid system.
The ECS. And in fact, that actually leads into a little bit something else we may have neglected. And this is the Gut Check Project. But the Gut Check Project is basically brought to you by KBMD Health. So this is Ken Brown Medical Doctor. So kbmdhealth.com is where you can find a lot of the research that we'll be posting. It's a brand new website, started a week ago. And from there, we'll be able to help bridge that gap and show your methods in terms of the research, the proven science, what works, what doesn't work. And you can even give us suggestions on people that you would like to see on Gut Check Project from kbmdhealth.com.
We talked about Paleo FX. I think it was 3 years ago.
Sure.
That I went to Paleo FX, not as a speaker, just to check out to see if we should be a sponsor. And that's when I walked by the Elixinol booth.
Oh, yes.
And Elixinol I've since learned, is a company that is fantastic. They've been doing the right thing the entire time in the CBD industry. Really, I vetted a lot of companies, and ultimately this is the company that I partnered with. But it was really funny because what happened is I walked by the booth, and a person who's now a friend, Christine, said, this is 3 years ago, hey, do you know anything about the ECS? And I'm a medical doctor. I'm like, I know absolutely nothing. And she just proceeded to vomit so much information on me that I'm like, look, I'll buy a case, ship it to my office, and I literally handed out hemp-derived CBD to my patients for free. And I just said, look, I don't even know what she was saying at that time because there was so much